What is up, Level Up Nation, and welcome to the June 20th edition of OTN's LvLUp Live, your home for the hottest takes in gaming news. My name is Jon, but you, and I am joined as, what am I saying, and you, and Joey is here as well, the king of the courtside king. Old habits are hard to break here, Joey. What's up, Joey? It's been a while. Our last show was an amazing showcase the other week. How have you been, sir?
Yeah, guys, I think the last one we put out on our feeds was the preview show, as Jon was saying, kind of before Summer Game Fest. So since then, we've had a ton of showcases, a lot of big announcements from Jeff's show at the Summer Game Fest opening to Ubisoft to Xbox, PC Gaming Show. We had a Nintendo Direct. Well, technically, politically not part of Summer Game Fest because they didn't want to pay Jeff any money to be there. They did put it shortly after the main events of other showcases. So yes, Jon, we had tons of games to discuss tonight. It's going to be a little bit of a hybrid episode, and we'll dive into the topics later. We're kind of going to thread the needle here between news of this week and then some of our showcase thoughts, since we haven't really done a post show for you guys on the podcast. So overall, lots of games to discuss tonight. A little bit of news as well, but it should be a fun show.
So I'm going to go back to my original question. How are you doing, Joey?
I'm doing all right.
Okay,
I'm tired. It is a lot covering all these gaming shows, as you guys know, trying to watch a lot of these, to build the events on the Discord server, to keep up with everything. It is quite a bit doing that. So it has been a nice little relaxing week, kind of coming down from the high of all those gaming announcements, watching the communities do their things, both excitement and their downrolled spiral of things like, oh, PlayStation's State of Play was not great in May, so PlayStation's dying. Is it though? And then you have Xbox. Is everything in the show going to Nintendo and PlayStation? Is it though? Like, people are crazy, but there were a lot of great games shown, and I'm very excited about that.
So Nation, when you ask Joey how he's doing, he is going to beat around the bush. So just keep that in mind. But Nation, one thing that doesn't beat around the bush is LvLUp's and OTN's social media. So make sure you are following the show on Twitter/X or whatever the heck we're calling it this month, and Facebook at OTN Media. If you are on Threads and Instagram, that is OTN_media. And while you're on Twitter/X, make sure you give Joey a follow at Courtside King and myself at Is This Thing Jon. And you can get our live takes as the news breaks, or because we are in the month of June going into July as well. Joey, I don't know about you, but I'll be tweeting a lot about the Euro 2024, Copa America, and Olympic soccer that is going to be coming up here within the next 8 beautiful weeks. I'm not going to have a life. Video games might be taking a backseat to some amazing soccer action. But Nation, you're here for gaming news. You're here for a podcast, and the best place to catch that podcast is here on Twitch. But have no fear, you have a life. We understand that, which is why we have the podcast version of the show available for you roughly 24 hours later after the live show is over. Make sure you check out the LvLUp podcast on your podcatcher of choice. Look us up. We are there for you. Extra credit. Hack into your grandfather's Amazon account this time around. We already hacked grandma's the other week. We're going to hack grandpa's this week. And use his Prime sub on OTN Media. Joey will personally fly you out for a foot massage. Asterisks, maybe not. But yes, use it on OTN Media. Joey, you teased it a little bit about our little hybrid recap episode. Is there anything else you want to hit on before we run into this episode with a full steam ahead? Full head steam?
Yeah, I mean, that pretty much does it, guys. There will be a little bit of updates as far as weekly news. We have the updated games coming to Game Pass and the updated games coming to PS Plus. We have a few new studio announcements. Unfortunately, some layoffs included in that, but some exciting new game announcements as well on that front. And then we do have those showcases to kind of recap. We'll be diving into Nintendo Direct from this week, as well as the Xbox showcase from a couple Sundays ago. And then last but not least, hitting on some of the other games that stood out to us throughout Summer Game Fest. So there is quite a bit to go on. I have a little bit of a cold, so I am having a little bit of nasally issues here and there. Hopefully not too annoying throughout the show. But overall, plenty of stuff to cover tonight, Jon, and I am excited to dive right in.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, viruses cannot be transferred via Discord or podcasts or Twitch, so have no fear. Put the Lysol away. Joey will not get you sick, at least this go around. All right, Joey, we have our topics before we can head into it. I have a feeling what your answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Yeah, it's not a good one.
Your beverage of choice for episode 341.
The trusty bottle of vodka. No, it's
I wish.
Just agua tonight, unfortunately. Trying to clear up my little nasaliness.
You know, it is scientifically proven that vodka actually helps with colds.
Is it though?
Scientifically speaking, of
Oh,
course.
nice. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is what it is, Joey. I have Coke Zero in a 2019 Nationals World Series Champion Cup that was given out in 2021, and it still looks this fresh. Actually, it was 2020, the COVID season. Hey, look at that.
Oh,
Irony. All right, Joey, we have our topics. We have our beverages, which means it is time to get into our first topic. But of course, before we do that, friendly reminder. Today's episode of LvLUp Live is presented by GamerBytes, bite-sized gaming news delivered weekly directly to your inbox. Sign up today, otnmedia.org/GB sign up. Joey, what a transition. Looks like the Red Demon is up first in Nintendo. What are we talking about today?
absolutely, guys. I feel like we go back and forth on if we actually have Nintendo stuff to cover. This week we do. They had a big Nintendo Direct, 40 minutes long, John. A lot of people expected this to be the Nintendo Direct that kind of closes out the life cycle of the Switch, or at least the main life cycle per se. There is supposed to be this Switch 2 coming. Nintendo said, hey, we're not going to announce new hardware at this showcase, but you should see an announcement here in the future. When the future is, we don't really know because the future keeps changing with Nintendo on that front. But assuming 2025 will be the year, this is probably some of the last games we'll see coming to the Nintendo Switch itself as we enter into kind of that transitionary period. With that being said, we have some big ones at this showcase. The first one kind of on the list is the Nintendo World Championships NES Edition. This was an interesting one, John. This is one a lot of speedrunners are pretty excited for. It's going to bring a bunch of old games together, kind of bringing the thrill of those old Nintendo World Championships. There's going to be over 150 speedrunning challenges across 13 NES games for this set. You can test your skills with legendary challenges. There's going to be ghost data running as well. So you can run against other people's ghost data to kind of challenge your own speed challenges up against kind of the professionals or the best in the world in that sense. There's a ton of games with this one. And I think 13 games along with the ghost data, the solo times and all of that is a really fun way for Nintendo really to support speedrunning. Now, again, Nintendo has had their, let's say, iffy ways around supporting esports in different competitions. Some they've just straight up shut down. Others they've regarded in ways of not supplying prize pools or cutting funding or suing them altogether. So it's been a little hairy out there. But I think this is a good sign that we do see them kind of joining into that speedrunning community, kind of coming up with a game from the ground up here.
You know what this reminded me of? I'm going to hop in my way back time machine here, Joey. A movie that came out in 1989.
Okay.
Super dated. Super old, but was probably one of the biggest North American marketing tools for was it Super Nintendo or was it Nintendo? I think it was Nintendo. I don't think Super Nintendo was out. Maybe it was Super Nintendo. Yeah, Super Nintendo. The movie called The Wizard, where
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, the kid runs away from home. Two friends follow along with him. He wants to compete in this video game tournament. And this is back when they had the gaming glove, a product that never really took off, but it was a real thing. This announcement for this World Championship NES run reminded me a lot of this movie, and it really brought back those memories of watching that movie back in the 90s. So I have the nostalgia of wanting to watch this movie again because of it now. It was a good movie. Fred Savage as a kid. That's like weird. It's weird.
All the nostalgia. If you guys want to jump into the speedrunning challenge, that one comes out July 18th. So just about a month away from today. Next up on our list of kind of showcase games to touch on in the Direct, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. What makes this one so unique? There's already so many Zelda games out there. Sure, it's a beloved franchise, but why does this one stand apart? It's because you're playing as Zelda. There's not many games out there you play as Zelda. Definitely no mainline games that I know of. You do get to smash around a little bit in Super Smash Brothers playing as Zelda there. But outside of the mainline series, it really does not happen. So it's up to you to play as Zelda this time, trying to rescue Link in some way or another. There's not really too many details kind of given away at the start here as to not spoil the story. But it does look pretty cool. It's kind of that I would say classic 3D animation. It definitely has an older look to it. But again, kind of playing as Zelda here, I think is going to be a big twist to the franchise and one a lot of people have been hoping for a while.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of N64 with the graphics, but with the 21st century take on some of the things. Like that void opening on the floor, that was not a Nintendo 64 thing. Like that's modern day technology. That's how you know this wasn't a 90s game.
Right.
But I love the inspiration. I love the graphics. And I love the idea of actually playing as Zelda. A lot of you would not believe the amount of people that actually switch the two, thinking that you play as Zelda and you're rescuing Link because all the games are called Zelda, Legend of Zelda, Zelda this, Zelda that. It's the other way around. You're playing as Link and you're rescuing Zelda. So I think this is kind of cool that you're actually going to play as Zelda in this game. I think that's really, really freaking cool. I like that switch. How dare Nintendo think outside of their proverbial Zelda box? That's very cool.
Yeah, it's a wild one. And I think, John, if you keep playing on this video here we have on Twitch, one of the cool mechanics in this is you can use echoes of water blocks to reach new heights. So one of the big things is if you see a table, if you see a chair, if you see a bush, you're going to have the ability to copy all of these objects. Right here in the video, you see them copying beds and boxes and all different artifacts. From there, you can build using them. So it's pretty much a copy and paste feature where you're building stairs out of beds, you're building bridges out of boxes, whatever the case may be. You can kind of take these objects you've saved to your inventory or your mind or wherever it's being installed. And then you're kind of building these different ways to traverse the landscape using all these objects, which is a very cool mechanic that I honestly can't think of in too many other games out there.
I really hope no one tries to recreate stacking 3 beds like that and then putting a trampoline on the 3rd bed and like hopping up onto a ledge. That's something I would do as a kid. If I saw that in a game, I'd be like, you know what? I could do that. I'm going to go up to my sister and be like, hey, let me borrow your bed real quick. Stack it on top of mine. It was like, hey, mom and dad, let me borrow your bed real quick and stack that on top of it and put a trampoline on it. Yeah, I could see that going over very well.
I think it's definitely going to create some very interesting clips online at the very least.
Oh, for sure.
Just imagine the objects people are going to use to traverse the landscape. It also, for those who like hunting out like collectibles and achievements and things like that, I could see them, again, Nintendo doesn't have achievements, unfortunately, but they do have the ability to put kind of like rarer items in these more awkward spots. And I think that could be an interesting way to really challenge players to get creative, to find their ways up to these really high ledges or through these kind of jungle areas, traversing through different uses of objects that are mirrored out. So I don't know. It'll be very interesting. Again, it's a Zelda game. It's going to sell well. It's Zelda once again, but you are playing now from the perspective of Zelda, which I think does make this one even a little bit more attractive, especially to longtime players of the series.
My question, though, Joey, is this going to be enough to convince people that don't already have a Switch to buy this Switch fully knowing that there's another hardware version of the Switch coming out soon?
I would say no. Now, again, it's Nintendo. Nintendo, they bypass all laws of the landscape, it feels like, when it comes to sales.
Very true.
They are going to put out a special Nintendo Switch for this game, too, I think. So there'll be some kind of like limited edition Zelda
and it's not going to come with the game either.
It's very possible.
Oh no,
it's Nintendo.
Because when I looked at jumping into Nintendo, because I really wanted to play Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, right? You can get that special Pokemon edition. It does not come with the game.
Nice.
It's ridiculous.
That would be a Nintendo thing to do. So my humble opinion, and guys, if you want to buy a Switch and jump right into Zelda, be my guest. You're more than welcome to. But same opinion with the new Xbox lineup that just got announced. Same opinion with the PS5 Pro. Same opinion with this. It's probably not worth going for this in the case that there's going to be new hardware coming out soon. But it's up to you guys. I mean, we don't know what that wait is going to be. A lot of people thought the new Switch was coming out this year. Now it's coming out next year. Is it early next year? Is it mid next year? Is it late next year? It could be the end of the year next year. So you could have to wait a year to play this if you do wait. So if that is the case, and again, we don't really know the date yet, it might be worth pulling the trigger if you can't wait a year. But I'm personally thinking it comes out probably a little bit earlier, maybe in the spring. But we'll have to wait and see what Nintendo decides on that front. For now, if you guys want to play Legend of Zelda and you do have a Switch or are looking at buying a Switch, September 26th is going to be that launch date. Next up is another classic, John, that should hit us right in the nostalgia feels. This is Super Mario Party Jamboree. Mario is making his way into Mario Party once again, and there is quite a bit coming around this time. We got 5 new game boards with this one. But wait, there's more. There's also 2 boards from previous Mario Party games, making this the biggest Mario Party yet, to my knowledge. You have 7 boards to play. Lots of different things here. Just based on the little teaser we got, we have some escalators in Rainbow Galleria. We have a track in Rollum Raceway, mixing things up with an active volcano in Goomba Lagoon. Oh, that's a fun name. And then 2 previous Mario
I like how you
boards.
slowed down. Goomba
I know. I was like,
Lagoon.
is this going to be a tongue twister? Goomba Lagoomba. Yeah, Goomba Lagoon. Just to name a few. 2. It does not mention what the 2 previous boards are in this article I'm reading. I can't remember if it shows it here on the video, so we might see that in a minute. As far as mini games go, that's what brings people to the game outside of the boards. There's 110 mini games in this one, which again, the largest selection in a Mario Party series to date. So 110 mini games, 7 boards, lots to go on. But wait, there's more, John. Now you can also play up to 20 players going head-to-head online and play them Koopa Athlon mode. Not 100% sure what that is, but I'm imagining like a bunch of mini games where you're playing off in like group stages and then you're kind of working your way through a bracket maybe later on. Again, I'm kind of imagining this here in my head, but I would imagine that's the best way to get 20 players to play mini games, because all these mini games are not going to support 20 players at once. There's going to have to be some kind of group stage aspect to it, I would think. Maybe Swiss rounds and you rotate different groups. Who knows? But either way, up to 20 players online, also the biggest in a Mario Party yet.
There's your
yeah, what was that? It was Rainbow Castle and
Mario's Rainbow Castle.
Oh, it's that old Western one. Yeah.
I remember Westerland. That one was a lot of fun. People hated it though.
It's because that dang train comes around. I remember that thing.
It was the train, and then a lot of people didn't like the game where you were on top of the ball on top of that plateau, and you like try to knock people off.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "Oh, my N64 stick on my controller got stuck." Yeah, that's why you rolled off, or is it just because you're bad?
You got smacked. That's why. Come on, people. Come on. But I think that sounds like a fun one. Mario Party games are always a blast. There's always lots to do in them. And especially with this one kind of being the biggest of the bunch, 110 mini games, 7 maps, plenty of variety for you to jump in with yourself, friends, and the players online, up to 19 of those as well. The date on this one is October 17th. Next up in the Switch, again, not touching on every game, guys, but we're going to touch on a couple more that pulled in a lot of clicks, views, and searches after the showcase. Mario and Luigi Brothership is next up on the board. And all aboard an island-hopping RPG adventure starring Mario and Luigi. The brothers are back for a brand new entry in the series where they will set sail on Ship-Shape Island. Part ship, part island. Go figure. To navigate the vast world of Concordia. You play as the mustache pair, you go on, and guess what? There's Peach and Bowser. You figure it's a Mario game. So not a ton there, but again, this is a franchise that's been around for a while. It meant to be a spin-off of the original Mario games, and then it's kind of become a bigger thing with Mario and Luigi pairing up more and more. It plays great with co-op aspects as well. I would assume this one has co-op. I don't actually know if this particular game does, but typically with these Mario and Luigi, there is some kind of co-op element, if I remember correctly. But in the end, this is going to be a dynamic twist on turn-based combat when it comes out November 7th.
You would think with all the running they'd do, they'd get rid of that little belly they had. I'm just saying.
It's so iconic, though, John.
It's like, oh, after we go on an adventure, we're going to eat 18 plates of pasta.
Yeah, for real. I mean, that has to be the way they time that out, right? Like, the man is running and jumping a ton. And this is some nice little boss animations we got going on here, too.
It reminds me a little bit of Cuphead.
Oh, I can see that. Okay. An easier version of Cuphead. I like it.
One that won't make you rage at the TV, Joey.
Exactly. I like it. I like it. So again, guys, that's a nice little lineup. Look at that. We got a September game, an October game, and a November game. And to wrap it up was the one more thing of the show. A game shown, it feels like almost 4 or 5 years ago at this point, finally making its return. That is Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Finally being shown here. I will be honest, Sean. I am not the biggest Metroid Prime fan. I've enjoyed a Metroid Prime game here and there, but I've never really dove like full head first into that series. I've played my fair share of Samus Aran and like Super Smash Brothers. But the full suit games, I've never been the biggest fan of, but I know a lot of people are hyped for this. It's a new mainline entry into the series, and it is set to come out in 2025.
But Joey, it's in first person. This game is horrible.
Were you ever a big fan of the Metroid games?
No, because I feel like when Metroid was really getting popular in the 90s also, there was it was going up against Mega Bomberman, if you remember that. And like my friends and I were really big into Mega Bomberman, and we spent all of our time playing that versus Metroid.
Okay, I like that. Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, it's always been interesting to me. Like, I get it and I understand it's fun. And I know a lot of people love it again. And no offense to you guys if you do, I think that's awesome. It's just, yeah, it's never been a game that's really stuck with me. Maybe eventually it will. Maybe I'll check out Metroid Prime 4. Can't make any promises on that front. But as far as the game, it looks very classic. It is interesting, though, John, and I have to say this. Seeing these Nintendo Switch games at the end of the Nintendo Switch's life, it fascinates me that we have so many people complain about graphics on Xbox and PlayStation. And then you have this game that looks almost like it could be on the Nintendo DS from like decades ago. It's just, it's not very graphically sound. And again, it is a little earlier. There's still polish to come. But that is some old hardware. That is hardware that's weaker than the Xbox One and PS4. It will not run a ton on it. And they do a good job getting away with it with the Mario games because they get like the cutesy little graphics and Pokemon as well. It just does not work for me as well with Metroid games.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And I feel like because it's Nintendo, they can do it, right?
Yeah, right.
It's like if Xbox or Sony were trying to do something like this, where let's say the current generation's at the end of its life, we know that there's another console that's going to be announced coming up soon. And they're like, oh, yeah, check out this end of console life game. And like you're thinking like end of life console means developers have pretty much unlocked everything from this console's generation that they can do. And they're getting prepped for the next generation. But then you take a look at this for Nintendo, and I feel like just because Nintendo has kind of cornered themselves into this market of family-friendly and kid games, even though there are some very not kid, like young kid games available on Switch still, but because they've cornered themselves in that market and they have fun-loving characters like a Mario Luigi, like Zelda and Link, like Pokemon, that no one's looking for Call of Duty level graphics on an Xbox or a PC or a PlayStation. They're not looking for, Madden graphics of ultra realistic faces or body movements or anything else like that. They're just looking to play a game. They're just looking to have fun and get lost in an adventure, which I think is completely fine. But that's how they can get away with game graphics that look like they could be on the DS or early N64. Or even GameCube, ones where it's like, okay, cool, great. You guys are making a living off of very basic, smooth 3D modeling, which was available on the N64 as well. And here we are, decades removed from the N64, and they're still making money on them. They're still getting people. They're still getting grown-ass men to go, oh, this is great. This is the greatest thing ever I've seen on the Nintendo Switch. And that's fine. It's because that's their niche market. And when I say niche, I mean massive worldwide audience. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious if Nintendo is going to run into any issues moving people over to new hardware. I mean, we look at PlayStation, we now know 50% of PlayStation players are still on PS4. We look at Xbox, and I would assume it's at least 50%, maybe even 60% still on Xbox One. Because even then, it's even easier to play the new games on Xbox One with cloud streaming. I think it might be difficult, as many units as Nintendo has sold of the Nintendo Switch, to move people over. And I think the big issue that they're going to hit that maybe PlayStation and Xbox haven't hit as much is moving people to those new games. You look at PlayStation, they still had wiggle room with the stuff at the end of the year, right? Like Xbox and PlayStation still had room to continue to put kind of newer games on old hardware. With Nintendo, they have really squeezed this lemon dry. There is not much more they can do graphically on this hardware. And I'm very curious if they have kind of that slow turnover to the Nintendo Switch 2 or the Super Nintendo Switch or whatever they end up calling this thing. I'm very curious what they do because I don't feel like they're going to be able to back publish as many games as PlayStation and Xbox did. And they might run into some struggles trying to translate that user base. Now, again, it is Nintendo. Nintendo is a special case, and it's very possible they go out and sell 50 million Nintendo Switch 2s pretty soon after it launches. That is definitely a possibility with Nintendo. But it will be interesting given the struggles that Xbox and PlayStation have both had with moving that audience over to new consoles. Anything else on the Nintendo Direct, sir? There was a ton of other games touched on. For the sake of time, we're not going to touch on all of them. I know your favorite cat game, Stray, is making its way over there this holiday, as well as many other games from Funko to Hello Kitty to a bunch of nice Japanese titles as well.
I was going to say Hello Kitty Island Adventures, man. You can't believe you left that off the list.
I know, it was high on my list. If Potluck was in chat, I probably would have thrown it in for him, but unfortunately, we will have to miss out on that one.
How about Nintendo Switch Sports? That's another big one. I mean, the Wii pretty much made its money off of Wii Sports.
Yeah, it did. It for sure did. And those games are always popular, especially with the different gyro style controls, swinging the actual bats and the clubs and such. They are definitely nice little heavy hitters. And there's quite a few of those over there on the Nintendo Switch. So if you guys are.
Which also the other thing to point out too is the reason why the Wii did so well was the multi-generational use it got out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking video game generation. I'm talking about human generations. A lot of assisted living and nursing homes used the Nintendo Wii as a way to help refine motor skills for elderly people. So I think that's a really cool thing. They also used it in rehab for a lot of people too, being able to go through the motions without the actual pressure of making contact with the ball or making contact using a racket or something like that. So I think it's a smart move. I think Nintendo has been sleeping on it, which is why I'm kind of curious as to why are we getting it now at the end of the life cycle of this console, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I like it. I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah, lots of good stuff there. Again, guys, it was about 40 minutes long. We can't cover everything on tonight's show, but if you guys want to check it out, plenty of other game announcements coming from that Nintendo Direct. Very highly rated. A lot of people rating this one right around a B plus A range. Some people as high as A plus if you're really into Nintendo titles. This one definitely struck some good nerves in a good way on that front as well. Over to PlayStation, a little bit of a lighter week here, a little bit of a lighter summer so far for PlayStation, but a solid new catalog coming over to PS Plus as they continue to kind of build up to compete with Game Pass on the front of how many games they have on their service. And they have some big hits joining in June. We have Monster Hunter Rise, Football Manager 2024, Crusader Kings 3, Monster Energy Supercross 6, After Us, Anno 1880, Police Simulator Patrol Officers, Far Cry 4, Lego The Hobbit, Lego The Incredibles, Lego Star Wars 2, the original trilogy, Ghost Hunter, and Daxter all making their way to the service in June. Again, quite a few titles, and the way PlayStation does it, they all kind of drop on the same day of the month, which, if I remember correctly, is right around the end of the second week, early third week of June. They also have a few games leaving the service in July, so heads up. If you guys want to play these before they leave the service, now is the time to do so. Those are Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, Dismantle, My Little Pony, A Maritime Bay Adventure. Love the pun there. Fast and Furious, Spy Racer, Rise of Shifter, Kingdom, Two Crowns, and Saints Row Re-Elected. So quite a few games leaving there as well. Not as many notable as joining, though. I think this is a good influx of games coming in versus those leaving here for PlayStation. Of the games leaving, though, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is pretty highly rated. Might be worth getting that one in, especially if you're a fan of the Borderlands series, prior to that movie coming out later this year as well. John, any of these catch your eye? I know quite a few of these are on Game Pass right now. I know Monster Hunter Rise is quite popular. Football Manager should be down your alley, but not quite. I know you're not the biggest fan of that franchise.
Yeah, it's I don't find it very user friendly. I like the idea of it. I just don't think it's very user friendly. I mean, it's very popular, especially in Europe. I understand that. I just don't think the interface itself is very user friendly, and that's a major turnoff for me. Is if you're gonna have a game that is essentially going to be simulating the business world, it needs to have some kind of fun and easy to use aspect to it. I mean, the last thing I need to do is read contracts for 20 minutes outside my real life job. Like I don't need to do that.
I hear you. But there's a number of other games in there, guys, whether you want to read contracts outside of your real-time job or other things. PlayStation now added them to the service. On top of that, a couple other quick updates for PlayStation. If you were on PlayStation and wanting to chat with people on Discord, you can now do so natively right on the console. For the Xbox players, this got built in a little bit earlier, and it's been going pretty well on testing. Now it has been rolled out to PlayStation as well. I don't know if PlayStation has screen sharing yet, but that should be coming here soon if it is not already in there. But you can now join voice chats directly from your PlayStation console. Just go in. There's usually like a little Discord section. It's either a separate app or within the menu screen. I think you can access it both ways. From there, go in, choose your game channel or your server rather than your game channel. You can jump right into that voice chat there. You cannot watch streams as of yet on the console. And again, I'm not sure if PlayStation has streaming from the console to Discord, but if not yet, it should be coming soon enough. And then for those with a PlayStation Portal handheld device, you also got a nice little update. Go ahead and check out those notes on PlayStation's blog post as well. Nothing super big, but some nice little quality of life changes coming through for Portal owners as well. Next up in the list is Xbox, John. We have some Game Pass editions for the second half of June here. This is quite an indie heavy set. Not any big hitters in this particular set, in my opinion, outside of EA Sports FC 24, which has been out for a hot minute, but available today. Still Wakes the Deep. That's a fun one. Definitely recommend. My Time at Sandrock, Kerplurth, and then June 25th brings EA Sports FC, available for cloud, console, and PC. June 26th is going to bring SteamWorld Dig for cloud and console, and then SteamWorld Dig 2 for console and PC. Last but not least, on June 27th, Robin Hood Sherwood Builders makes its way over cloud, PC, and console. Again, guys, a pretty indie-heavy second half of June here coming out for Xbox. Also leaving the service, again, same disclaimer as with PlayStation. If you want to play these before they leave, these are the titles leaving on June 30th. FIFA 22, Fist Forged in Shadow Torch. That is quite the name. Stranded Deep, Story of Season, Friends of Mineral Town, and then Sword and Fairy Together Forever, as well as July 5th, bringing the exit of Cricket 22.
Yeah, I will say this. I'll be kind of curious to see the numbers with EAFC. Because it has the Euro update that just got put out a couple weeks ago. Actually, last week for the Euro tournament. But, like, there's always a boost whenever there's a major summer soccer tournament going on any place in the world, especially if it's in Europe. So I'll be kind of curious to see if there's going to be a boost, because now the game's going to be on Game Pass. So we are still in the group stage of the Euros. In fact, they just started match day 2 for all the groups yesterday. So they're still fresh and good to go. We're only not even halfway through the group stage yet. So still plenty of time. Then you have the knockout rounds. I'll be curious to see what the numbers look like for this when it comes to Game Pass.
Yeah, not to mention a lot of the European leagues wrapping up around this time too. People start getting that itch. They're like, I need some football or soccer in my life. And this ends up scratching a lot of those itches for a lot of people throughout the summer, I know as well. So we will see how that does. Plus the Olympics, John, as you said.
And the Olympics too.
That soccer could also pull in quite a bit. Do you know if they're doing an Olympic update? I don't know if they have rights for that.
Most likely not. I don't think they've ever done an Olympic update.
I can't remember either.
Well, I think the cool thing is obviously a couple of years ago they started including women's national teams in the game as well. Now there's a lot of women's soccer leagues in the game now. But you can easily get those set up in the game now. It's just not going to be like in an Olympic setting, if you will. But you can easily go into a single player mode and create a tournament where you play as a country, and you can set the other AIs for other countries and kind of go through that. But yeah, man, there's ways to do it. But I think it's going to be really, really cool. And I really love the cover art for the Euros here, with some of the best up and coming talent in the world, in the world of football right now. Also at the beautiful Olympic Stadium in Berlin, as the backdrop with that magnificent bell tower in the back. That stadium is absolutely incredible. I've had the honor to actually go there in person. There's a lot of history there. I'm going to drop a history bomb here on you real quick. The Olympic Stadion in Berlin is one of 2 remaining buildings built by that very bad man that did some very, very, very bad things. We're not going to say his name because I don't know what Twitch's policy is on all that kind of stuff. But you know who I'm talking about. It's one of 2 buildings still standing in Germany to this day that came from that regime. So cool little history tidbit there for you.
Very, very interesting. Quite intriguing indeed. Speaking of history, one other game I want to shout out here, Still Wakes the Deep. It's not on this graphic, but it did release in this window of games. It takes like a Scottish tone to it. It's around, I don't remember the exact year, but it was kind of like when the Loch Ness first started coming up. A lot of like this Loch Ness monster myths kind of came from this time period. It's very interesting. You kind of play, you're someone on an oil rig, you're getting ready to leave the oil rig, and kind of all hell breaks loose. It's a little bit of like a horror thriller style game. Again, not typically my genre, but it is a lot of fun. And I've been playing through that one. I know T-Spans in the OTN chat was also playing through it earlier this week. It's kind of a very intriguing game with a nice little story to it. Not the greatest game I've ever played. I think I'd give it somewhere around a 7 or 8 so far out of 10 through my playthrough, which is maybe halfway. I don't really 100% know. But it is definitely a fun one to look forward to. So keep an eye on Still Wakes the Deep if you have Game Pass as well. Definitely a cool one. And if you're on another platform that is not Xbox, I want to say this one released everywhere. Maybe not Nintendo Switch, but it's PlayStation, Xbox, and PC at the very least. Okay, Jon, next up, we're going to talk marketing just quickly. Jarrett West, Xbox Chief Marketing Officer, is leaving at the end of the month, heading to Roblox. Why, or what do I think of this? I think this is a good move. I am very happy with this move. Now, has Jarrett done a good job? Yes. Jarrett has done his thing. He came over from Netflix originally. You can obviously see that influence in the way he has marketed Game Pass. Game Pass has been the kind of big supplier for Xbox. That's where they're bringing in a ton of money. That's where they're making a lot of their deals. That's the thing they're pushing hardest and hardest in these showcases. With that being said, I think Xbox's marketing, and Jon, I think you hit on this a couple weeks ago, has been pretty weak overall. Outside of Game Pass, they have not really marketed super well. And even with Game Pass, you still have a bunch of people, well, why don't I just buy PlayStation? The game will eventually come over there and vice versa. And that's something we've critiqued in the past, is kind of that Xbox marketing department. I like this move in the sense that they're restructuring their department altogether. So if it's their hardware marketing team per se, they're now going to sit with the hardware team. If it's a games marketing team, they're going to sit with the games they're actually marketing, instead of kind of this higher level approach where they get things sent to them here and there, and it's kind of discombobulated and they don't really know fully what's going on, but they have this footage they need to share and here and that. And I'm sure it's more fluid than I make it sound, but overall, we have definitely seen their marketing suffer. I like the idea of them being closer, more grassroots with the products they're actually marketing. And I think we will see a big bump from this as the future kind of moves on, outside of just the showcases, which Xbox has obviously nailed out of the park the last couple of times. The other marketing outside of kind of that summer showcase, though, has been extremely lackluster in a lot of different aspects. So I am curious to see how this transition changes things. If it does change things, if one guy really had that much of an impact, even though he was up at the top. And again, no discredit to Jarrett West. I think he did a good job with certain aspects, but I do think there was room for improvement. And I'm curious to see if this brings about that improvement.
This was his second tenure with Xbox.
I don't know much about Jarrett West, to be honest.
Yeah. So I'm doing a little stalking on LinkedIn because your boy's a creep. He joined Xbox back in 2003 as a lead marketing manager, got promoted to senior global products manager, where he says, quote, I successfully marketed and managed the global campaign strategy for the 360 and games for Windows exclusive games, including Halo.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so there's that. Then he got promoted to group global product manager. Then director of marketing in 2008, manager worldwide team for marketing for Xbox Live subscriptions. So that was his big thing, and cross-platform, cross-marketing, cross-group collaborations, blah, 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 blah. And then he went to American Express, and he went to Netflix for 7 years, and came back as the chief marketing officer of Xbox. So which is kind of interesting. And the reason I want to bring that up is because the 360 was probably one of the best consoles Microsoft has ever put out there. But then the Red Ring of Death thing happened. And from a marketing perspective, from a PR perspective, that's a nightmare. You can't sell when your hardware is breaking for no reason and you have no way of fixing it or understanding what's happening. You just know it's a critical error within the hardware itself. So it's kind of curious that he came back to lead Xbox's marketing department once again, starting in December of 19. It's kind of interesting, but no, you hit the nail on the head, Joey. I've been very critical of Xbox's marketing. I feel like Microsoft has really mismarketed their products quite a bit. I applaud them for reaching out internationally. Obviously, Xbox has a pretty good grasp here in North America, but internationally, it's not even close to what PlayStation's doing. And it's because the message, the marketing message overseas, and even here in North America, is not very good. It just really isn't. The fact that they have Game Pass, which again, I'm going to sound like the Game Pass shill here, that is your moneymaker. That is your golden goose. And they're hardly pushing it. And unless you're already in the Microsoft Xbox ecosystem, or you're a Sony bro that absolutely hates Xbox, and this is the number one reason why you hate Xbox, you really don't know. Why? Because you watch TV and a commercial pops up, and what does it say? Available day one on Xbox Game Pass. Huh? And then the commercial changes and your attention's already gone. You got to do better. You got to explain what Game Pass is. Have commercials for Game Pass. Crazy idea. Have ads just for Game Pass and shove them in the people's face like you're running for president in a year. Like, that's what you need to do, is you need to go on that kind of campaign. Put it on YouTube. Put it on social media. Go everywhere. They're not going to do it. And that's the problem. But yeah, cool. Great. Woohoo.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think he did a good job getting it off the ground, right? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like there were a lot of subscribers early, but since then it has kind of toppled out. We're at like what, 30 million, I think, are the last reported numbers. And it's kind of hovered around there. Yes, they're targeting more of the PC crowd now. Maybe Jarrett was not as involved with the PC side of things. It sounds like he did a little bit of the Windows game development there kind of early on in his career with Xbox. But I am curious to see, and again, I think the big thing you hit on for me is the attractiveness for the international crowds. I don't think Xbox has done the greatest job marketing themselves in Europe, marketing themselves in Asia. And I think one of the things that at least sounds like they might start changing earlier than later is kind of marketing to those crowds more. When they're in Europe, they're going to cater their catalog, their showcases to that European audience. They're going to cater it to PC users because they know they don't have a ton of Xbox consoles out there. So yes, they're going to mention things are also coming to console, but they're going to cater it more toward that PC user base. Over in Asia, they're going to kind of cater it toward cloud and to the Series S, where they know people are buying kind of those supplemental consoles, where they know Game Pass could be a big seller over in South Korea, in Japan, in China. I am curious to see what it ends up looking like once this all kind of shifts out. And we do see these teams kind of moved and placed in different areas within the company. But with that being said, I do think a fresh take on things will be nice. And again, placing them closer to the products they are marketing, I think will help down the line. It's just, again, finding that central vision, like you're saying, Jon, nailing home what Game Pass is and then how good of a deal it could be. Outside of marketing, we do have some new input on the possible software side of things as well. Bethesda has filed a new trademark. Not really many details on this one, but the trademark itself is Motor, powered by ID Tech. We do have the serial number if you guys want to look it up for yourselves. That's its serial number is 986-07273. Again, guys, a new application here. We don't really know too much of what it is from this. I will say it matches what the Starfield Shattered Space one did come out to be as recorded computer game software. So it's very possible this is a new game. The thing that throws me off is later on down the line, they talk a little bit more scientifically. They talk a little bit more about education. That starts making me think like, hey, maybe they're looking at doing something like what Epic does with Unreal, where they might license out some of these engines they have. They have the creation engine in-house. They have Slipspace in-house. They have ID Tech in-house. They have a number of these in-house engines that, again, not as popular as a Unity or as an Unreal, but they are pretty strong freaking engines. I mean, if you guys saw Doom Eternal, that thing is one of the smoothest running games out there on the market, and it runs on ID Tech. Could this end up being something that allows them to license that engine out, maybe a training program to go with it? Or is this just a new game with an interesting name stating that it's powered by ID Tech in the title? I don't really know, but I am intrigued at the very least. So Motor, if you guys want to check that one out, from Bethesda and probably in some way linked to ID Software. Making our move over to the Xbox Game Showcase, to our last Xbox segment of today's show. Jon, they had the biggest showcase of Summer Game Fest. I think that's undisputable at this point. Some people rate the Nintendo Direct higher, but on most polls, it looks like the Xbox Showcase is edging out the Nintendo Switch Showcase by just a little bit. With that being said, there were a number of big headline titles, especially in the AAA space, from Call of Duty Black Ops 6 to Doom the Dark Ages, Gears of War E-Day, Avowed, Perfect Dark, Fable, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and much more. What title stood out to you the most in the showcase? What are you most excited to play?
The one that stood out the most was because they shoved it down our throats for 25 minutes after the showcase. Was Call of Duty I Have Nothing Else to Imagine Black Ops 6. It's running out of steam. I'm getting sick and tired of it. I am sick and tired of it. If it's coming to Game Pass day one, congratulations, Xbox fans. You're living the dream, or should I say the Sony PlayStation nightmare. You're not going to have to pay $80 for this possibly terrible remake of a game. I'm sorry. It's not a remake this go around. It's actually new. Oh, it's going to take place in the 90s also. Weird. Call of Duty doing something weird, not remaking a game that came out 9+ years ago for this year's go around. I'll probably end up playing this game, Joey, for one sole reason. it's on Game Pass. That's the only reason, because otherwise I wouldn't buy it. And I'm also interested because it's in a time period that your boy actually lived in the 90s. So that's kind of cool. And it takes place a little bit in Washington, D.C., which is in our backyard. So that's kind of cool also. But other than that, there's some other good stuff out there. Like Doom obviously looked absolutely incredible. You talked about the engine on that here for a little bit. Let's see if I can find it here. Was at the beginning, if my memory serves correctly.
Hey, a second.
Hey, Xbox, how about we break your videos up here by games like Nintendo does on YouTube? That'd be nice. Can you easily find these games a little bit easier doing it this way? But yeah, I mean, it looks incredible. It looks smooth. Probably one of the smoothest games I've seen. So big shout out to the engine that runs this game. Plus, taking a little page out of Gears of War with a little chainsaw on the shield though instead of the gun. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, you're hunting demons like a badass and you're killing demons. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Perfect Dark. That was another big one that came out. A lot of people are super stoked about that. Joe, I think overall it was just a very good showcase. It was a very, very good showcase, is what we've come to know from Xbox from these showcases. I think it performed a lot better than a lot of people expected. I think they were able to mix in, the upcoming games that are coming soon within the next 18 months, I would probably argue, for the most part. I feel like the only one criticism is what you brought up on our post-game show, not post-game, WizDG, on our post-presentation show, and that was there was a lack of what's coming in the future past 2025. And I think it's a very valid criticism. My criticism of this showcase was there wasn't that much new things we haven't seen or heard about. And
there's a lot of returning things.
A lot of
things we
returning
haven't
things
seen in a while.
And also a lot of titles that they get to put under the Xbox banner flag that were in development prior to said studios being acquired by Xbox. So that was my only criticism of it. Other than that, the games they put out here, Joey, again, if you're on the Xbox ecosystem, you're eating good for the next 18 months. It's going to be delicious.
Oh yeah, and they still have some fun things to announce here coming up at some point in the nearest future. I did put a link in there, John. I want to touch on Perfect Dark a little bit. You started to mention it. You and I have played the original. I mean, it's been years since we played the original. And for Nintendo Switch owners, I think that one actually just recently launched online, though it is having some technical difficulties with the emulator. There's a little bit of like a dizziness that can be had. With that being said, this new game kind of takes a very different approach to it, John. I feel like the original leaned into espionage. This one leans even harder into it. On top of that, it almost has like a Mirror's Edge aspect to it, where you're kind of repelling yourself. You're kind of jumping over obstacles. You're running around rooftops. You have kind of like a little bit of like a Tom Clancy aspect to it almost as well, with the way you're kind of planting bugs, it looks like in here. You're kind of working around trying to hear the environment and then kind of make your moves based on what you're hearing. Not quite as Assassin's Creed. I think Tom Clancy's probably the best comparison there with some of the Splinter Cell stuff. But I'm super intrigued by this. I think this is a very new age approach to it. And in a day and age where I feel like we get a lot of remakes and a lot of remasters, and they're very similar to the original, I like that this one feels like it's stepping away a lot. And it really feels like they took that jump from, I don't know, it's got to have at least been, 2 decades, I think, since the last Perfect Dark, at least 1 decade, if not 2. I feel like this really brings it into a new age perspective. The graphics look great. Again, graphics are not everything, but I do think in this game it delivers, especially from its Nintendo 64 self. On top of that, you come out, you have these new gadgets, you have new unique ways of using gadgets we have not maybe seen in many espionage games, or at least recently in espionage games. And again, I think the first-person perspective of it is also going to be a very unique take here with the espionage genre.
First person, you say? I hate the internet sometimes. Everyone's like, oh, it better not be a stealth-only game. It better not be a stealth gameplay majority kind of game. What do you think Perfect Dark was? What do you think made Perfect Dark Perfect Dark? I mean, that's like arguing, oh, Metal Gear Solid's crap because it's a stealth game. Metal Gear Solid 5 shouldn't be stealth. Metal Gear, no stealth. We don't like stealth. Siphon filter, nope. Stealth, nope. Not anymore. Not in this day. Not in this day and age of video games. Stealth is 290s and 2000. The reason why people want these games remade or continued is because of that game style. Even to this day, stealth-like games are not that common. They're really not that common. Even Assassin's Creed has moved away from a lot of stealth-like operations in their games. Go back and take a look at the original Assassin's Creeds. There's a lot of stealth involved, and even they're returning to stealth. So that should tell you something. There's a want for stealth-themed games, like a Perfect Dark, like a Siphon Filter, like a Metal Gear Solid, and like Assassin's Creed. So crazy idea, internet. Control-Alt-Delete and just power down your whole damn thing.
Oh. There you guys, you heard it here first.
Yeah,
I mean, that is one of the things, right? Like we've talked about it before. People are arguing about Blades of Grass and Far Cry 6. People get caught up on the littlest things. I mean, you see it happening right now with Star Wars as well. People are like sending death threats over the Acolyte and over some new announcements in the Star Wars community. It's like, people, just take a chill pill, guys. It's entertainment. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be enjoyable. Yes, it is totally fine to have a disagreement with it or to not like something. Totally fine. Do you need to send death threats? Do you need to call people names over it? No, you really don't need to, guys. It just means you're taking it way, way too far. And that just seems to be a commonplace in everything from TV to games, books, whatever the case may be. And unfortunately, that is some of what we have seen come out of Summer Game Fest as well. Now, with that being said, there were plenty of other good things we saw as well. One of the other games that we were hoping to see something for this showcase was Fable. We also got a new look at that. And Jon, I did add some links here into the notes to make life a little bit easier for those live with us here on Twitch. But Fable is going to be one of those games that I think is going to be an interesting one to watch play out. Again, big graphical update from its most recent launch, which was like late Xbox 360, early Xbox One, if I remember correctly. It has definitely had some big graphical tones. On top of that, a lot of people thought this was not actually in-game play. A lot of people still confuse this game thinking it is CGI. It is actually in-game play for a lot of the aspects you see throughout the trailer here for those live with us on Twitch. On top of that, though, Jon, and I think this is where things are going to get interesting, is Fable historically is a game where you create a character and you kind of play them through the storyline however you want to, making whatever choices you want to in kind of this British humor environment. With this Fable, and again, I could be wrong, but it seems like we've seen the same girl in every trailer. Now, again, it could just be the create a character that they're using for marketing, but it could also be more of a story built around her character, which I think is the direction they are going to go here. And I am curious to see how the audience reacts with that later on.
Yeah, and I really think if you're going to get rid of the customization of your character, the story has to be good. Like, there has to be a payoff. There has to be a reason why you're getting rid of it. But I also don't think it's going to be a make or break. Like, it shouldn't be a make or break for people. If you've enjoyed playing this game in the past, you're going to enjoy playing it now too. I mean, we can clearly see from this trailer the elements that we know and love from Fable are present in this rendition of it also. Aside from possibly the lack of customization for your character, I think it looks great. Graphically, it looks amazing. It had me chuckling throughout the showcase. It's definitely a game I'll be looking at also. It's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, it definitely looks like a fun one. I'm very intrigued by it. And I just love the British humor. I think British humor is so well done in this series. And at least from the trailers we've seen so far, it looks like it will continue along that route, which should be a lot of fun for everyone involved. Excited to dive into Fable when it launches in 2025. Next up, Jon, South of Midnight is one I really want to talk about. It was not initially on our list. I cannot believe I forgot it. This is probably my game of Summer Game Fest, to be honest. I freaking loved the look of this. I think the art style is so freaking cool, and I'm sure you'll touch on that as well. You're taking kind of this biome environment, or bayou rather, this swampy environment that we don't really see much in video games today, in today's day and age. I feel like a lot of the big AAAs have avoided that kind of biome. I'm glad to see them diving right into the bayou, giving us this nice Cajun feel. You get some nice accents, some nice action. You get some nice crawdad fish action as well, along with this catfish. It's very mystical. You have a talking catfish. You have this giant alligator. You have some kind of cool powers that get shown throughout this trailer as well. But Jon, this game is checking all the boxes for me. I think the graphics look great. I think the animation and narration looks fantastic. It's a very unique art style. I feel like the characters are interesting. I want to get to know them more. And then when we do eventually see gameplay in this, I think the gameplay looks super smooth as well. It just kind of checks every single box, and I'm super excited for this game.
Yeah, graphically, it kind of has that Arcane feel. If you are familiar with Arcane of League of Legends for Netflix, that series there, just with the overall style. And Joey, one of the big things was we actually got to finally see gameplay, and we got to see how fluid it was from cutscene to gameplay, which I think a lot of games struggle with. No cutscene, just go straight into it. I think that's a huge change. As well, a lot of games starting to go forward with that, and obviously there's no like fade to black, game loads, comes back or anything. There's no like loading screen. Obviously we're in the 21st century, so we shouldn't have load screens anymore. But yeah, but this is really cool. We got to see the gameplay, we got to see a little bit of the story. It kind of gave you a little bit more insight into what you're dealing with. Obviously there's these mystical creatures, but then there's also these abilities. Like, she pulls out this glider parachute out of nowhere, and it kind of looks like she's controlling spirits, right? So if you're familiar with, Louisiana, Cajun, Creole kind of culture, there's a spiritual aspect to it, right? So to me, that's what I was getting while watching this. Was it feels like maybe this is like some sort of like afterlife area, or maybe like a limbo kind of area where you're able to control spirits, or it can just be not that at all. But that's just kind of the vibe I was getting from this. On top of it, you have a demon catfish. Hello, Tom Kench. We know what you're doing in your retirement from League of Legends, since you are completely unplayable. But yeah, like right now, she's using a glider that looks like is made from spirits and like the wind of other spirits carrying her to this destination. Obviously, there's an old-timey church here. You have an alligator island, which is kind of cool. It kind of reminds me like of a Brothers Grimm kind of narrative story.
Ooh.
Of like if I was to like envision what that would be visually, this is kind of like where it's at. It's almost like fairy tale-esque, but yeah. So like that's kind of what I took away from this. Joey, I agree with you. I think this is easily the game of the showcase. This is the biggest game I'm looking forward to playing from any of the showcases, in all honesty. This is a game that we've been watching since it was announced. It caught our attention from the opening trailer. Now that we have gameplay and the seamlessness of gameplay to cutscene to info scene to whatever it is, super smooth, super great. I think it looks incredible. And yeah, I mean, coming in 2025, so we still have a little bit of ways to go for it. But Joey, I feel like they are building up the hype the proper way to get people really excited for this game. And from what I've seen for games coming out in 2025, if this game pays off, easily a game of the year contender.
And I like the ballsiness of the studio today as well. With today's day and age, it's all about FPS, right? You want these crazy fast frames. They say, whatever, we're going to go with this stop motion style animation. Yeah. The heck with people wanting the fastest frames. Maybe that comes back to bite them, but from an artistic perspective, I love that. Everyone is trying to dumb down certain areas of their game to make the performance higher so they can hit this 60 frames per second that everyone wants to see. This game, while it might run at 60, it is definitely cutting it down with that stop motion. It is saying, we're going to slow you down anyway. Based on the art style of our game, we want it to play out in this certain aspect. And I love the fact that they trump forward with that, even if people are out there crying for FPS. So I think that is a big win for the studio. I also think this is so different than anything else we've gotten from them. Their other games have been very like grim dark in aspects. We Happy Few was definitely a darker game. I think I mentioned the other one before. What's the name of that thing? I can't think of the name of Contrast. You play as a shadow kind of, or you kind of work through your way through puzzles via jumping into shadows on walls and things. It's a very unique puzzle game. But again, it is kind of that darker, grim, dark-esque kind of environment. And I like the fact that this one, while I'm sure there will be dark themes to it, it doesn't feel like a horror thriller game. It feels like an adventure game. It feels like something with color in it. It feels like something that can pull in audience of all different shapes and sizes as well. And I think it's going to be a very unique one when it does hit. And Jon, like you said, this could be a dark horse for game of the year. I definitely agree with you on that front as well. Let's see. We've hit quite a few of these games. Avowed also got a new showing. I don't know if we need to jump into every single one of these, but Avowed is one that we've continued to get more interviews for. They did another showcase as well for that. I definitely think that is one worth checking out, especially coming from some of the best storytellers in the industry and Obsidian Entertainment. That one is set to come out later this year, potentially in November. I know that release date leaked. I don't know if that's officially been announced yet, but around mid-November is what they were targeting based on a blog post that came out with a quote from the director. We also got a new look at Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I thought they did a good job with this one, John. We've seen some gameplay here and there. We saw a little bit in January. Since then, they've definitely improved things like the whip mechanic. I think people are growing more comfortable with the idea of this being a first-person game. As your argument goes, if people, they live their life in first person, they can play a game in first person. I love that.
I just think it's scientific, my guy. It's all I'm trying to say.
I think it's very fun. But one of the other aspects I think that they nailed very well in this new look was kind of the humor. They really play into kind of this German humor aspect, and I think they do a very good job of that, as well as giving us a new look at a different biome, this one kind of being more of an icier shape. I think it's like a frigid kind of frigate ship maybe that we're kind of in. I don't remember exactly what part of the world we're in at this point, but it's definitely an icy area.
Yeah, and then of course, you know, you have your typical like scenes in the desert, your scenes in like Middle Eastern countries, Germany, yeah, you're going to be all over the place. I mean, that's one of the great things with the Indiana Jones franchise. So I think it's going to be really cool. But yeah, I'm honestly really enjoying the complaints about, oh, first person whip mechanics. This is so stupid. Yeah, it's very interesting.
The internet, a place you love to be, huh?
Love it. Love it.
I mean, I am very intrigued, and I'm starting to. The game is growing on me more and more. I think we both have said this. Neither one of us is the biggest Indiana Jones fans out there. I love the idea of multiple biomes. That is always a big selling point for me in games. But I also like the idea of approaching some of these puzzles in first person. I think that is going to be something we don't really get with a lot of these games. You look at Uncharted, you look at Tomb Raider, they're all third person perspectives. And yes, they have great puzzles, they have great combat, but this style of game has typically been done in third person. And I think stepping away from that, going the first person route is a really cool way of doing this, where you're kind of encountering those puzzles from a different perspective than you're used to in these games. And I honestly think that's one of the reasons a lot of people are kind of held back on this. One, because they're used to seeing indies back in the movies, but two, because they're used to playing this style out in a certain way with Uncharted, with Tomb Raider, and now it's kind of taking a different perspective. So we'll see how it plays out, but I definitely think it is a good one to look at. Just a couple other games here for the showcase, and we'll move on. John, the one more thing for the showcase was the Gears of War E-Day. This is one of the top-rated wishlist games, which kind of stuns me. I know you're not the biggest Gears of War fan. I do love some Gears of War, but this is in the top 3 games of all Summer Game Fest being wishlist right now, only available on PC and console. We kind of got to look at the older style, the younger rather, of Marcus and Dom in this one, taking back those classic characters from the original Gears of War trilogy and giving us a look at them kind of in their younger days. I think one of the cool things they can do with this, and you and I both being kind of history buffs in our own aspect, I love the idea of seeing the origin of these weapons, because you have these crazy creatures coming up from the ground. We know we eventually get the like Chainsaw Lancer. What was its origin? How did they come up with that? Where was this gun developed? And I think there is a lot of areas where they could really dive more into those thriller horror aspects, but as well as those history aspects, where these weapons came from, how they decided to work their way around to get us to where we are in Gears of War, the original game. I think there's definitely a lot of room to play around there. I'm a little bummed that we don't get the resolution of the kind of cliffhanger at the end of 5 anytime sooner, but I do like the idea of them going back to the origin here. And I think there is a lot of room to work with. Next one on the list, and possibly the last one, Expedition 33, an indie game in the showcase, John. This one stood out to us both quite a bit as well.
I freaking love this game. I'm going to tell you why. I mean, one, just artistically, it's wild. It's present day places in a disheveled kind of universe. And then there's this mysterious tower of this figure that's counting down. And every time the number drops, somebody gets Thanos snapped. Right? It's nothing new. It's nothing crazy, but like, it's wild. The premise is you have to stop this figure from counting down, because every time it counts down, random people no longer exist because of it. Graphics look incredible. The idea in my head about how this gameplay is going to go, how the story is going to go, has me incredibly excited. But for an indie game, graphically, it looks absolutely beautiful. Experimenting with different styles in this game. having that sci-fi feel to it, but also almost like have like some steampunk elements to it as well. Like just the levels change, and the fact that it's like, it's like a rhythm-based game, but also turn-based at the same time. It's so full of different dynamics in this game that if it's pulled off well, I think this is easily indie game of the year. And if it's as good as I'm hoping it is, who knows? Maybe it'll get some game of the year nominations also. But just viewing this right now, it has a combination of a lot of different game styles. The graphics are great. From what we know about the story, seems incredible so far also. I'm excited for this one, Joey. This one really caught my attention.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know I'm a huge indie game fan as well. I think this one definitely ticks quite a bit of glances, as well as Flintlock, I think, was also in the showcase. Another one I'm pretty excited for there. Quite a few good indies here and there, but it was definitely first party heavy. Yeah. I think this is the most first party heavy an Xbox showcase has ever been. When you go out and buy 2 publishers, it becomes a lot easier to be first party heavy. So that is worth keeping in mind here as well. But we did get some other big third party reveals. We'll touch on these a little bit later on in the show, kind of in our multi-platform section. But Assassin's Creed Shadows also made an appearance. Atomfall was another indie game. Dragon Age: The Veilguard, another very popular wish-listed title, made its way in here. Life is Strange, Double Exposure. Jon, I know you're a big fan of that franchise, so we can touch on those a little bit down the line as we move into our next section. But quite a few games in this showcase. A lot of people arguing this is the best showcase Xbox has ever had. A lot of others arguing it is definitely in the top 3 of gaming showcases out there. So a pretty strong showcase showing, especially from the first-party perspective here from Xbox. With that being said, Jon, let's transition into our multi-plat general gaming news. We can keep touching on some of these other third-party games here. Assassin's Creed Shadows is one that stood out to me. I love the idea of going back to like a samurai feudal Japan setting. I think it's about freaking time that Assassin's Creed has made its way over there. Is it going to be the greatest game? I think it's going to have some competition to some degree with stuff like Ghost of Tsushima, where we have seen some really good samurai-style games recently. With that being said, I think Assassin's Creed Shadows, being that signature Assassin's Creed style, bringing out what a lot of players are already comfortable with in that genre, can do a very good job here. On top of that, you're playing as 2 different characters. You're kind of playing as your straight-on assassin, and then you're playing on as more of a beefy samurai character as well. I'm curious how those different aspects are going to play out, because they are very, very different. One much more stealthy than the other, and I am curious to see how that does play with those 2 different perspectives throughout the game.
Just real quick, Joey, I want to point this out. Jeff Keighley's poll for the Xbox Showcase, 166,000 votes, right? And you have 87% giving it a B or higher, with 65.6% giving it an A. That's pretty impressive. Now, if you think that's just gamers being gamers, right? 76,000 for Nintendo Direct, 50% A, 29% B. But then when you keep going down to some of these other ones that came out, and
it gets a little yikesy.
It does. Ubisoft, D or below. Congratulations, Ubisoft. How did you manage that? Especially with all the titles you have coming out as well. Like, it just blows my mind.
To be fair, most of the polls look like that Ubisoft one.
Yes.
Generally speaking, it is usually B heavy with quite a bit of C and then a lot of D. It's usually like B and D are the big ones that usually come out of these.
Well, not
so Xbox and Nintendo just kind of killed it this year, and that's why they look so skewed.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're very, very positive. I don't know. Did Jeff delete his own one? Because that's a funny looking one.
I didn't look at it. If it's Jeff Keighley, I automatically give it a C. C for cringe.
Okay. That's a little toxic, but we'll
it's
keep
for
it
cringe. What half drunk B-list celebrity is going to show up this time?
He did better with that. I felt like
we have video games. It's not a drunk Al Pacino coming up. And it's not Robert De Niro going video games. What is this?
I think the biggest problem Jeff is now running into is it costs a lot of money to put trailers in his shows. I mean, that number came out, I think it was Variety maybe that came out the article, but someone put out an article of just how much those spots cost for like a minute to 30 seconds. They are quite freaking pricey. On top of that, if you're Xbox, you're already going to be running your own show. Why not keep most of your stuff for your show? Same with PlayStation, same with Nintendo, same with Ubisoft. So you're getting a little bit here and there. I think like EA put a game in there, maybe PlayStation put one game because they didn't run their own show outside of the state of play in May. But typically speaking, a lot of these big publishers, I think, are finding it more and more cheaper to just run their own show. And it seems like the viewership is still showing up. I mean, this Xbox showcase, we don't have the numbers yet, but it broke all of the viewership records. So if you're Xbox, why are you going to pay to put it in Keeley's show when you can put it in your own show and still pull in a ton of viewers? Yeah. And I think a lot of these, again, PlayStation, Ubisoft are probably in that same boat. So I am curious to see what his show does moving forward, but we will see him again in Gamescom because he usually does the opening show there, assuming he is doing that again this year. Let's see. Star Wars Outlaws not making the top 20 in wish list was a big surprise for me, but I think this game looks phenomenal. I love the idea of a Star Wars game that does not follow a Jedi or does not follow a Sith. It kind of takes a different approach. It's going that bounty hunter route. I think it's something the franchise does Star Wars really need anything? Who knows? But from a video game perspective, I think this keeps it fresher than some of the other stuff we've gotten. And again, I love Jedi Survivor. Do not get me wrong. I think it's a phenomenal game. But when we look at Star Wars games, it's almost always you're playing as a Jedi or Sith. I like the idea of something different, give us new environments. Now we're going to be in like the underground of Coruscant and these different planets. We're dealing with syndicate leaders. We get to go hang out at the Hutt Palace. I think there's a lot of unique aspects in this game that it's going to bring to the table that we haven't really seen as much in other Star Wars games. So I'm pretty hyped for this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I think the criticism of it so far is the same criticism we're seeing from the Acolyte, which I think is bogus. You really shouldn't just hate a project because you don't agree with the casting choice of the lead character, or should I say the gender of the lead character, which is where a lot of social media toxicity is coming from with the Acolyte and Outlaws. I think that's ridiculous. But other than that, I mean, the game looks great. The idea of being a smuggler is a nice, fresh take on Star Wars games. There was that Mandalorian leak that came out a couple years ago that nothing really came out of that. But that game even looked exciting, and that wasn't a Jedi or a Sith-based game. So yeah, I'm excited for it. And yeah, I'm also shocked that it's not in the top 20 also.
Yeah, very, very surprised by that. These rankings, by the way, coming from IGN. I'm going to list off a few more of these, John. We can jump into whatever ones we want to. But next up, Civilization 7 came in at number 11 on the wish list charts from IGN. Dragon Age: The Veilguard came in at number 5. Speaking of Dragon Age, as a quick disclaimer, if you guys have not played those games and want to, I think a number of them are on Game Pass, probably PS Plus as well, but they're currently on Steam for 90% off. If you're a PC player, definitely worth checking that out. Monster Hunter Wilds coming in at number 15. Black Myth Wukong from, I think it's Game Science over in China. A lot of people have been super stoked for this list. It's been very high on a lot of lists for quite a few years now, coming in at number 17 on this year's summer wish list. Lego Horizon Adventures from PlayStation at number 6. And then Valorant from Riot Games making its way over to the Xbox and PlayStation consoles at number 7 as well. I have been playing the beta. It is a lot smoother than I was expecting it to play on console. So definitely worth checking that one out if you're interested in a little bit more of a tactical shooter on console as well. Of these, John, any others you want to dive into? I didn't put Life is Strange on this list. I don't think it made top 20, but that was also shown throughout the summer.
Which is not surprising, especially after the fiasco that was True Colors. But yeah, Double Exposure, Life is Strange, I think is going to be really cool. Max Caulfield coming back as the main character from the original Life is Strange. I think that's going to be really, really awesome as well. Different powers kind of going there as well. So I think that's going to be super cool. Civ 7, that's something that they needed to do. There's too many historical-based or mythological-based games like that that have been announced. I have a lot of people excited. Ara is one of them. That's one that's on my list also. Civ 7 is also on my list. The folks over at Sid Meier's does a great job with Civilization. So Civ 7 definitely on my list. At 11, I think it's a little low, but I think based upon the trailer they put out, or the sizzle reel, I should say, I think 11 is completely fine. Once we see a little bit more gameplay. And also when they start announcing leaders that are going to be in the launch edition for coming out next year, I think that's when it will start to jump up a little bit more.
And I think this was the first reveal, right? I don't think they've officially revealed it before this. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's all that to take into consideration as well. Assassin's Creed being number 9, I figured that'd be a little bit higher. Shadows just seems so cool, and it's a completely different historical time period as well. I think is pretty awesome. Definitely going to get me excited to play that game again. Yeah, but other than that, it's really Civ 7, Assassin's Creed, and Star Wars for me as the big ones that we haven't talked about already. Obviously, South of Midnight and Expedition 33 are two big ones for me as well.
And for those not listed here, so I think 7 of the top 10 were Xbox games. So we have already discussed those earlier ones as well. They were in that previous Xbox showcase. So I think we did hit on at least the top 10 here, plus a few extras, quite a few big games. I think Black Myth Wukong is going to be another one a lot of eyes are on. Again, that's an indie studio coming out of China. It's been pretty high on a lot of people's list. It's one of those games, though, where I think it's built the expectations up incredibly high. And I'm very curious if the indie team is going to be able to deliver on that. It's a lot of pressure to deliver on that, especially from a AAA perspective. But to do it from an indie studio as well, I think that's going to be some added pressure that team is going to have to kind of mitigate as they get closer to launch. But definitely one worth keeping eyes on. Its combat looks super fluid. The bosses look big. It's not a Souls-like. I think it's a whatever the combo is, kind of in between Souls-like and actual action adventure flowy combat. It should thread that needle pretty well. I definitely think that one will be worth keeping an eye on. And then Dragon Age: The Veilguard, it did get a recent name change. This was Dragon Age Dreadwolf, I think was the original name of it. It's going to be a very different game that we've seen from previous Dragon Ages. Again, it's going to play quite differently. The mechanics, I can't remember if this is turn-based. I have to look at it again. But I know the combat system is definitely going to be different than what we've seen in previous games. So it will be one to see how that splits the audience. But as far as lore goes, it will continue to expand on that as the next mainline game is being built out. Should be good times on that front and lots more. Again, guys, there were, I think, like 15 showcases. Most of those definitely indie heavy. Some really cool indie games out there. Hopefully we'll be putting out a video on YouTube at some point of some of those indie games that stood out to us, in addition to Expedition 33 we discussed here. But lots and lots of games, lots and lots of showcases. Plenty to look forward to in the next 18 months. Next up in Multi-Plat General Gaming News, this is where we throw the sad stuff in just quickly. There were some more layoffs throughout the industry. This one a little bit more on the positive side. PlayStation's Fireswipe Studio has finished its layoffs. So these were announced a year or so ago. It's been a few waves coming out of Fireswipe from the PlayStation branch. It is now done with its last wave of layoffs, at least the ones that have been publicized. Hopefully that is the end of them from that studio over there. Again, very sad to see talent leave that studio as they've been building quite a bit. But hopefully they do land on their feet very soon. And last but not least, we have Paradox Interactive. They are shuttering Paradox Tectonic and canceling the Life by You game. About 25 staff were affected in that one as well. So again, a very unfortunate time in the industry where we are seeing a lot of these layoffs as games kind of come down from the big hiring phases that we saw over COVID, where everyone was stuck at home, everyone was playing games. Unfortunately, it is the industry correcting itself at the moment. Next up is Beyond Good and Evil from Ubisoft, the 20th anniversary edition. Surprisingly enough, this was not mentioned in Ubisoft Showcase. It feels like a missed opportunity on that front, but we do now know from an Ubisoft Twitter post, or X post rather, that was posted like 3 times today, deleted, reposted in good old Ubisoft fashion. They finally eventually got one out that stuck. This one is launching June 25th for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series consoles, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. So wherever you want to play it, Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Edition should be launching out. Supposedly, there is a teaser mission that does tease what is coming with Beyond Good and Evil 2. If that game ever sees the light of day, I think it was announced like 7, maybe almost 10 years ago at this point. It has been quite a while. I think it's still in development, maybe, question mark. We have seen a lot of troubled development at Ubisoft for a number of their projects, Skull and Bones being the most recent one to eventually make its way out of port. It took a good 7 years for that game as well. Many different developers. So hopefully Beyond Good and Evil 2 does fare better than that game did. But at least for now, we get an old anniversary edition and a little bit of a teaser mission. Do you ever play the original, John? I did not play the original Beyond Good and Evil.
No. What I find interesting here, though, Joey, is being released on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One.
Yeah. And again, that's because more than 50% of players for PlayStation and Xbox are still on the older consoles, which is crazy.
It blows my mind that, but like we're like, what, 5-6 years into this generation? Generally, developers stop supporting older hardware at this point in the life cycle. But that is quite fascinating.
Yeah, you just don't want to lose those players, right?
Yeah.
Like you have 50 million people or whatever on PS5 and 50 million on PS4. If my game is old enough, if my graphics can be Nintendo Switch-like, I want it to release to as many players as possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's the idea here. But again, I think that also builds into why we have this lagging conversation as far as why games aren't hitting FPS of 60, why games aren't hitting these new graphical heights. We've seen some of them push the limits, right? Like Senua Saga Hellblade 2 definitely pushed the graphical limits. It didn't quite hit the frame rate. And I think that was more of a cinematic choice. But you look at a lot of these games and they're threading the needle. Do we want as many players as possible? Well, if we do, we're going to have to dumb down some of the things this game can do. Do we want to optimize completely for the new consoles and take advantage of some of these new features that we might have with the faster SSD or whatever on PlayStation 5, with some of this high velocity architecture on Xbox Series X? And that's the decision developers are having to fight between right now, as far as, is this enough to move the needle just launching next gen and really giving the best product we can? Or do we split it a little bit and still try to hit those older player bases? And at least for now, it looks like the older player bases is the choice of a lot of these developers. Now, again, this is a remake, or a remaster rather, so it is an older game. This is going to run on everything, including the Nintendo Switch, but a lot of other games are still making that decision as well. Next up, for our horror game fans, I don't know if Dan is still in chat, but A Quiet Place, the movie, is now getting a video game as well. This one has been announced for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. We have the first trailer for this one showing. I love the idea of this, Jon. I think the movie concept is fascinating in general. Being in a theater with a bunch of quiet people, it was so funny because no one buys popcorn for these movies. It's like super silent. You don't have any eating or chewing because everyone's afraid to make any kind of noises. I love the idea of translating this to a video game. Now, again, it's not your own breathing in the game, and I think that would be a cool aspect to throw into this. Give me a co-op mode. Give us mics where if we breathe too heavy, something comes out, or we have to like make hand signals to one another. I don't know what that looks like, but I think something like this with a co-op or multiplayer aspect would be really cool. With that being said, I think this game is single player. It's going to take the approach of being very quiet, being stealthily, and there will be horror thriller aspects to it as well. But I definitely think this will be one to keep an eye on when it does eventually launch. I do not think we have a release date for this one as of yet.
This is a hard pass for me. This has jump scares written all over it.
This might be on my limit as well.
Yeah, I'm the person, you scare me, I throw punches. So don't
sit Jon far away from the TV if he plays this one.
No, plus horror movies are too predictable. So I have yet to come. There's only been one horror movie that had one scene that freaked me out. That's only because I don't like needles. And that was Saw 2. The needle pit to this day will still make me want to pass out. But other than that, no, I'm good.
Those are even beyond horror thriller too. Those are like super gory and everything as well. They definitely head down that direction. But yes, if you guys are into kind of thriller games, A Quiet Place, the video game will be coming out for next gen consoles and PC. It does say 2024 is the release date. So don't know exactly the month of time, but we do know it will be coming out later this year. Coming to the end of today's show, again, this was a little bit of a catch-up episode as we had to kind of hit on all these showcases in addition to some of this week's news. But for our Elden Ring Souls-like fans out there, Elden Ring's DLC Shadow of the Erdtree has just launched as of tonight. I'm sure many of you guys are playing that and watching streams of it. It's already putting up insane player numbers on Steam, as well as viewership numbers here on Twitch. So if you're into the Souls-like genre, definitely worth jumping into that one. Though, quick disclaimer, you do have to beat 1 or 2 bosses before jumping into that. I can't remember the name of the bosses because I never got that far. But you guys might want to look that up before you spend the money on the DLC and then find out, hey, I got to play another 144 hours before I can even access the DLC zones. Definitely worth looking that up so you don't have to request a refund or commit your whole life to the game. But yes, lots of fun stuff.
So you're
going
saying
on
you didn't get past the innkeeper, Joey?
I did not.
You didn't get past the innkeeper?
Yeah. I got past the innkeeper, but let's say I did not get much farther. I cleared out a wolf den. I took out some other crazy looking people. But when it comes to games like that, where you just get one shot if they actually make contact with you, it's like, oh my gosh, I've clicked restart so many times on this game. I can only roll so fast. And maybe it's just I need to level up more in these other areas. Maybe I need to memorize these boss patterns more. But if it takes like 1 to 2 hits to kill someone, it is just like, this game is very hard to beat. So I have not gotten very far in that one for sure. That might be a lifetime game. Maybe eventually I'll finish it as my reflexes slow around the age of 65 or whatever. We will wait and see on that one. Upcoming, though, is some other stuff to look forward to later on in the year. Gamescom in Cologne, Germany has been announced. That is going to be August 20th through the 25th. So far, PlayStation has said they are not attending, and so far attending, we have Xbox and Capcom. Still plenty of announcements to come on that front as far as people who will be attending and will not be attending Gamescom. But again, that's kind of like the E3/Summer Game Fest of Europe. one of the biggest hands-on. And one thing I loved that unfortunately we don't really have as much anymore with E3 kind of going to the wayside is this one still allows audience members. If you're in Europe, if you're in Cologne, Germany, if you want to go visit, if you want to go hands-on with these new games, Jon, your game I think is going to be there. World of Warcraft, The War Within, I think is going to be a hands-on game there. So lots of fun games to kind of go hands-on with over there in Germany if you are around. At the Xbox booth, Capcom booth, and probably many more to be announced.
I mean, hold on a second.
What do you got? Why do you have that face?
Yeah, Joey, it better be, considering it. It will literally come out for early access in the middle of Cologne, Germany, for Gamescom.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Perfect.
So yeah, it's gonna be available.
They also have unreleased games available too, guys. Like Aura, I think is going to be hands-on. Towerborn will be hands-on. Cool. So there will be games that have not released yet. Even if it is releasing in the middle of the week, you might be able to play a day or two early if you do make your way out to Cologne, Germany. Unfortunately, we would not be making the trip this time, but maybe in the future, that would be one hell of a fun trip. We'll see if that ever comes to fruition. But last but not least on today's show, the free Epic Games for the week. If you're playing on PC or you think you might be in the future, log into your Epic Games account. This one is free. I have the wrong date on here, but it's free for the next 7 days. I'm not going to calculate that in my head, but I would think that's probably like next Thursday. Freshly Frosted is the game. Not a huge discount here, $9.99 regularly, but it's free, and brother, don't turn down free. So if you guys want to check out this cool donut-looking game, you can do so.
What is it?
Goes away. I'm not really 100% sure.
Is it a donut frosting simulator?
It definitely has a donut with frosting and sprinkles on the cover that I saw in Discord. But let's take a look. It looks like, it's like, I think it's like overcooked or like plate up. Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe not. I'm not really sure what's going on here.
There's
a lot of donuts. Simulator. There's a lot of baking going on. Definitely worth checking out. Again, free, $9.99, now free, Epic Game Store for the next week. Anything else you want to say, Jon? I know this has definitely been a longer show as we kind of catch back up from our craziness of Summer Game Fest. But yeah, quite a bit we covered tonight.
Yeah, no, I mean, there is a lot to cover. Yeah, a ton of great stuff coming out in the next 18 months. Gamers are going to be eating good. Xbox gamers are going to be eating really good. Especially with the amount of money they'll be able to save. That's going to be kind of cool. But yeah, nonetheless, I mean, I think Summer Games Fest was a huge success with all the showcases, even if Nintendo kind of piggybacked off of it, even if Jeff Keighley was dumb enough to really, plug everything Nintendo put out there also for free when charged everyone else to do it, but that's fine. It's whatever. Got to keep Nintendo happy. But yeah, other than that, I think overall, I think it was a good couple weeks. I think it was a good handful of showcases, and I think gamers have a lot of things to be happy about in the next 18 months.
I like it. Let's take us into that closing.
I was like, I wonder if that's my cue to wrap it up. Nation, that's going to do it for this episode of Level Up Live. But before you go, make sure you follow the show on Twitch to catch the next episode of Level Up Live. If you listen to the show on our podcast feed, please do leave us a review. The Level Up Podcast is available on Spotify, iTunes, Google Plays, and your podcatcher of choice. Just look us up. We are there for you. We love to hear from our community in multiple different ways. In all ways. We just love hearing from you guys. There are multiple ways for you to reach out to us. Joey, what are some of those ways?
Absolutely, guys. Head over to Twitter/X and Facebook and find us at OTN Media. On top of that, you can find us on Instagram and Threads as well at OTN_media. Last but not least, twitch.tv/OTN Media is where you can find this show live Thursdays at around 8 p.m. Eastern Time, as well as some other streams throughout the week. And guys, another quick announcement, YouTube, we're starting to build out our page over there, cleaning it up a bit, putting out some stuff like game reviews and gaming news videos, hopefully using it more in the future. You can find us over there by searching for OTN Media. You'll see our nice little white logo with the black background. That might be changing here depending on what we do with that page as we create it, but check us out over on YouTube.
All right, make sure you tune in next week. That is Thursday, June 27th, as we continue to cover the latest and greatest in gaming news. Do your ears a favor. Hit that sub and follow button to know when the next episode of Level Up Live is ready for your entertainment pleasure. We will catch you all next week. Enjoy your weekend, and remember, be nice to your fellow gamers online. And as always,
level up.
Let's go, let's move side to side, let's go. Let's go, let's move side to side, let's go.